Alrighty, guys, Daredevil Born Again has concluded, and we are going to be talking about the entire series, mostly episode 9, mostly the finale, but the entire series in full spoilery detail. There's a whole lot to get through. I say this almost every single episode that we talk about Daredevil Born Again, but I'm amazed with just how much there is to get through, and I'm excited to talk about it with you guys. So, this is going to be a full spoiler discussion. I unfortunately was away on Tuesday night, and I didn't get to see the episode in real time, so I didn't post an immediate reaction. But I am back, of course, to do a full spoiler discussion, as per usual, for Daredevil Born Again, as we conclude this. And we look forward to more spoiler discussions, of course, with The Last of Us Season 2 and ANDOR Season 2 coming up. So, anyways, that's just me stalling. If you haven't seen the series and if you are not wanting to hear spoilers, click away and save this segment, save this podcast for later, and we will talk about it in spoiler detail. And you can come back, as always, whenever you are ready. So let's get into Daredevil Born Again. I think it's even more appropriate now than ever to do a sort of mini recap of my thoughts on this series thus far. I've liked the series, right? I think that it's clear to me what the stronger parts of the series are, and that is the characterizations of Kingpin and Daredevil as they are really grappling with a return to their forms of Kingpin and Daredevil from Matt Murdock, attorney at law, and Wilson Fisk, mayor of New York, right? And they're really starting to merge the personalities that they have, the civilian personalities, back into their old vigilante and Kingpin personalities. And I think that that's super interesting. Some of the political stuff that's going on, especially in this episode as well, really fascinating. The Bullseye, and I think Muse stuff. I know a lot of people were upset about the way that they used Muse, and I don't know. I think that that Muse was appropriately integrated into the story, and I think that he worked really well. I agree, by the way. I did a spoiler discussion of every single episode, so you can go check out episode, I think 7 was the Muse death episode. And yeah, I agree that I wish that they built up that character. I already forget his name, the character's name, but I agree that I wish that they had built up the character a little bit more than they had in the show. Regardless, I really like that kind of stuff, and I think that the way that the villain was so scary and imposing, and then Kingpin is still the real villain of this show. I agree. I think it's really good. So there are things in the show that I really like. Some episodes, again, are just slower, and I like Mr. Khan, right, Kamal Khan's father. I don't know if I love the episode that he was in. I think some parts of the episodes are a little bit slower. I am not on board with anything about Daniel Blake in the series, James Gandolfini, or is it Michael? I can't remember. But Daniel Blake, I'm not a fan of it. I think some of the Vanessa stuff is not quite as interesting. The couples therapy stuff was not quite as interesting. And I think that the show just didn't find its footing until episode 7, I would say. Episodes 1, 7, 8, and 9, we'll get to 9, feel like they're part of the same show. The middle episodes feel a little out of place, if I'm being honest, in comparison to the rest of it. Not bad. And I definitely think that they have their moments, like the end of episode 2, great stuff. Some of episode 5 and episode 6, rather. Episode 6 has some really interesting stuff with Daredevil and Muse, obviously. I think that that's all great. So we get into episode 9, we get into the finale, because episode 8 I thought was great. It wasn't my favorite episode. I think episode 7 was probably my favorite episode of the show. Or maybe it was episode 8, I can't remember. But, the last couple episodes have been really fantastic. So we had in episode 9, and obviously Matt had just been shot. Spoiler alert, big spoiler, he's fine. He's totally fine. I mean, he's not fine, right? He's limping around a little bit. But if getting shot in the chest is, and all you get is limping around, then he's fine, relatively speaking. And so we head into episode 9, and we deal with the ramifications of all of that. So here we go. We're starting out here with a little bit of a flashback to Vanessa before she orders Bullseye to kill Foggy. And so, of course, it wasn't Agatha all along. It was Vanessa all along, as we were finding out here. She also, though, betrayed Bullseye, right, when he was let go, because she's promising, oh, you'll be free, you'll be let go. And then he immediately is taken back into prison. So, and then he escapes again in the series in episode 8. So I'm curious to see, because he kind of runs off and disappears completely from the show. That's a loose plot thread. He'll come back in season 2, I'm sure. But I'm curious to see how he deals with Vanessa Fisk, if he does address what happens there, because I think that that's something that needs to be addressed, right? The fact that Vanessa, said, oh, you're going to be free, and then immediately he went back to jail. So Matt is also in a hospital at this point, and he's waking up, and he says Karen's name instead of Heather, which is a big clue as to the character that's going to be appearing later on in the episode, Karen, obviously. And I think that the relationship with Heather is probably disintegrating as we speak. I don't think, obviously we see her joining the Fisk administration, so that's not a good sign for their relationship, and I think that there will be a lot of tension there. I think, though, that we're leaning back into the Karen and Matt dynamic, which is an exciting thing. Then we see a scene with Fisk and Vanessa. So Fisk has the blood stain on his shirt, and they seem like a very united front at this point. Heather, meanwhile, thinks Matt is completely crazy for thinking that Kingpin is this dangerous guy that needs to be stopped at all costs, etc., etc. And now Fisk, right? So we have these parallel storylines going on with Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk. And Fisk, who was just saved by Matt Murdock, has zero mercy, and he wants Matt dead, even though he saved his life. That is brutal. That is Kingpin. That is brutal. And I think that is honestly so in line with the character. And so I'm pretty happy about that characterization. Obviously not happy about that for Matt and whatnot, but happy about that for the characterization, because I think that is very in line with what Kingpin would do. He's ruthless. He's ruthless. And he hates Matt. He just hates Matt more than anything else. Then Sheila, right, who has been his chief of staff, I think, is she, Kingpin's like, hey, I need you to get rid of anyone who's not loyal. And she's like, okay, I'm on board. Later on in the episode, we kind of get some mixed feelings from her, mixed vibes, but and some horrifying things that happened on with the police commissioner. But yeah, I think that, we're seeing this whole thing, right? Again, not to draw in real world politics too often, but I think there's the sense of people who are saying, if you're not with me, then you're against me. And we only want the people who are loyal. And that's exactly what's going on here with Wilson Fisk. This is the kind of political drama that I really enjoy, though, in my fiction. Is Kingpin is trying to the idea that Kingpin is trying to cause a mess, right? To where he's trying to kind of create some anarchy so that he can then bring in the anti-vigilante task force to kind of paint himself as the hero. It's very interesting. It's very a very interesting angle. Then they shut down the entire grid, and honestly, I don't know. Felt like a little bit much to me just to catch Matt Murdock. You shut down the entire grid. It's a little bit dramatic, but Matt heads back to his apartment, and we see Frank. And Frank says, oh yeah, I got a phone call to help you out, and I think we all knew it was Karen at this point. Also at this point, I was wondering if we had ever gotten an explanation as to all the Punisher fanboys. We kind of get something later on in the episode, which we'll get to, but I'm still a little bit dissatisfied with the lack of explanation regarding the Punisher fanboys, but I guess we'll get to that. Maybe that'll probably be towards the second season as well. I also like how they're bringing back the idea as these people are fighting Frank and Daredevil. We're getting back to the idea of the guy who shot Hector Ayala, because I think that, again, it's making those disjointed parts of the season feel a little bit more in line with what else is going on, right? And which I think is a good thing, and I'm pretty excited about that. And so I think that bringing back the idea of Hector Ayala is definitely something that helps bring the show around to the full circle, and I think that is a good thing. I also like how Matt and Frank still duking out their philosophical differences about killing, whether or not to kill. And then there's a grenade, and they jump out, and here we go, because Karen Page steps out of the car, and we are officially back. And there's something so comforting. The show feels complete again. I know Foggy isn't there, and we miss Foggy. I miss Foggy. But Karen, Matt, Frank, it feels like, okay, we're finally completely back to Daredevil. Daredevil Born Again, I wasn't expecting it to be the show was born again. Like, literally, the show took its own time to be born again. I was not expecting that. But I think that it's appropriate, and I think that here we have the show really being revived in a big way. And I'm very excited about that for season 2. I'm very, very excited about that. We cut back to Daniel Blake, and I'm still not on board. If he's back for season 2, which it seems like he will be, I'm just totally not on board with this character. Everything about him annoys me. And I know people will say in the comments, he's supposed to annoy you. And I get that. But the execution of a character who is annoying versus a character who just annoys you, I think there's a subtle difference for that, for me. And this is a character that just completely annoys me every time he's on screen. I just can't stand him. I just can't stand him. We get some scenes here with Matt and Karen where they're talking, and there's that chemistry again. They're looking through those old boxes, and I think Matt says something like, "I'm glad you're back," and I feel that. I'm so glad she's back. I'm just so thrilled that we're getting Karen back into the show as well. So we get a bit more of the grander scale of the plans of the Fisks. They're building their own, what they call a city-state, right? Someone calls it a city-state, and that's the Red Hook project. And then Frank goes in, and Frank tries to just basically wreck shop himself, and he kills everybody. he gets captured, right? And then Kingpin reveals that he knows about the inside deals that Sheila and Commissioner Gallo are trying to make to raise this to the Supreme Court and the state courts and whatnot. And I think that it's interesting, right? Because this whole Red Hook idea kind of came in a little bit late for me. So again, it's all about these things of I wish they got a little bit more build up, because Red Hook seems like it's going to be a very prominent part of whatever's next in season 2. But for right now, it just feels a little bit unfinished. The Punisher fanboys, we finally get to see them, get to meet Frank, and they just kind of beat him up, and they don't kill him. They just take him to Kingpin. So there is that. And then Commissioner Gallo has his head exploded. And that's all I'm going to say about that, because that's crazy. And so the show kind of just ends right there. And I don't know. I mean, Daredevil just kind of, I think the scene where Daredevil and Karen, right, Daredevil's about to go in and just take down the whole thing. And Karen's like, no, you can't do that. I mean, I agree. He had just gotten shot. So of course he can't do that, right? Physically. But then the show just kind of cuts away. And Daredevil's at Josie's and he's like, we need an army. And that's just kind of it. And so to me, the episode was building quite well. And I was really on board. And then it all of a sudden felt like the momentum was just taken out from under it. And I was a little bit shocked, honestly, a little bit disappointed that had happened that abruptly, because I was just not expecting the show to the episode to kind of abruptly end that fast. And I know there's going to be a season 2, but to me, it doesn't feel like they really completed the show. It was almost like, oh, gotcha. And now wait for things to get crazy in season 2. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, because I kind of wish that a little bit more had happened there. Obviously, the implication we need an army is the Defenders. So I'm really glad, because I put out a poll a few weeks ago. I had been rewatching just Daredevil, but out of curiosity, I gave Jessica Jones a spin again, and I've been really enjoying it. So looks like that's going to be paying off, because I think all the Defenders are coming back. We'll see if Finn Jones comes back as Iron Fist, because he was probably the least popular. No fault to Finn Jones, I'm sure, but I haven't seen Iron Fist. But anyways, so I'm glad that I'm rewatching all the Defenders series, and we'll hopefully, by the time Daredevil Born Again season 2 comes out, we'll hopefully have rewatched every single Defenders series, or at least rewatch the Daredevil series, because I haven't seen any of the individual other series as well. So we'll get to those, but I'm excited about that, and I think that will be really fun. So anyways, in this final wrap up here, we get Heather joining the administration. And then Bullseye is still out there. That's a loose thread. Fisk is declaring martial law, which is crazy. I mean, I get it that New York is isolated in a sense, but where is the federal government? I mean, I don't know. It's a very nitpicky kind of thing, because it's the show. The show's got to happen to the show. That didn't make sense at all. The show has got to happen, right, story wise. And so I'm not saying like, oh, I want the next season to just be about I don't know, the White House coming in and grabbing Fisk. I don't know. But I'm just saying that it's kind of an interesting thing here. And then Frank is in a cell, and he is ready to escape, and that will probably lead into the Punisher special presentation. He'll probably be a part of that army, right? That comes in Daredevil Born Again season 2, and that's where we end the season. So guys, overall, I think this last episode kind of encapsulated my thoughts on the show in its entirety. There are some amazing things in this last episode. Frank and Matt, amazing. Karen coming back, amazing. Some of the Daredevil, Kingpin, politics stuff, really good. But it also was oddly frustrating, because the end of the show felt like it was right there, and then it just went boop, and the rug got pulled out from under us. I'm not saying that I dislike the end of the episode because of the cliffhanger. That's not exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying that it felt like the story that they were trying to resolve, Daredevil's like, I'm going in. And Karen's like, you can't. And he's like, you're right. I can't. And that's it. And I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one who feels like that was a little bit dissatisfying, especially in the context of the rest of the show, which just felt like it was pretty up and down for the most part with again, really high highs. I said it before. And some low lows, right? Some of the scenes in episode 5 for me stick out like a sore thumb. Not good. The Irish gang, not great. But again, I see the potential. I love the potential. Charlie Cox is still amazing. Vincent D'Onofrio is still amazing. Deborah Ann Woll, great. John Bernthal, great. You got some interesting supporting characters that are new, that should play a big role. Not a big fan of Gandolfini, but still, I think that there are a lot of great and interesting ways. And most of all, you see the direction of Fisk really just grabbing power and not letting go. And I think that is an interesting place to end the first season. So I honestly will say I didn't love Daredevil Born Again season 1. I liked it, but I am so excited for season 2. That is where I am officially that's not the right word, but that's where I am ultimately there you go. That's where I'm ultimately going to land with this first season of Daredevil Born Again. And if you'd like to hear some of my more in-depth thoughts on any of the other episodes, feel free to check out all the other spoiler discussions, because we have done spoiler discussions for every single other episode of Daredevil Born Again. So you can go check out those videos. But guys, let me know in the comments, what did you think about Daredevil Born Again season 1? Are you excited for season 2? And how does this season compare to the other 3 seasons of Daredevil? Let me know in the comments down below.